Concordia Language Training Center. He has been on staff at Concordia Language Villages since 1995, and he actually remembers one of my kids. He's serving 8 years as director for year-round programs and 10 years as the associate director for operations. Martin holds a bachelor's degree from the University of North Dakota and a master's degree in business administration from the Carlson School here in the University of Minnesota. Martin has been a Rotarian for over 25 years. Yahoo! Serving as the club president for Bemidji Rotary in 2012 to 2013. He lives in Bemidji with his wife Lisa. The youngest of their 3 children spent a year in Stockholm, Sweden, as a Rotary Youth Exchange student. Martin will be talking about 65 years of Concordia Language Villages, summer camp, and so much more. So please welcome Martin Graefe.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And I know that Peggy has been working on getting somebody from the Language Villages to come down since spring. Initially, our executive director, Mary Moskoja, who lives in St. Paul, was planning on being here, but something came up and she couldn't, so I said, we won't postpone this anymore. I know how challenging it can be for Rotary programs to get set up. I've been there myself, so happy to be here. And we come down here to Twin Cities quite a bit. My parents live in Mound. My wife grew up in Bloomington and have sisters on Sweeney Lake in Golden Valley. Their mom, Joyce, was over at Calvary for the last 2 years, which is a great place, speaking of assisted living and elder care and all those things. So feel very comfortable being in Golden Valley and happy to be here. As Peggy said, I've been with the Language Villages for a long time. 95 is my full-time years. I started as a camp counselor in 81, so I know it keeps dating me further back, but that's just how it is. And that's when I had David, one of her sons, in my cabin as a counselor way back when. So when I saw the name, I was suspicious, and then when I saw her, I knew it. So the Language Villages have been part of Concordia College, Moorhead. Concordia had a professor of education, Gerhard Huckabo, who in the late 50s was a principal at an army dependent school in Germany. And his family lived there with them. The kids were picking up the language, German language, playing with German kids on the playground just because they kind of had to through play, and figuring out who's going to get on a swing next, whatever, all those things. And he and his wife were having a hard time picking up the language as adults. And so he came back with this idea of Concordia starting a language camp. And at the time convinced President Knudsen to try this. And in the first summer of 1961, they had 72 kids from kind of a 5-state area, Ontario and Manitoba, in a German camp, at a camp that they rented near Alexandria. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll back up, but that's kind of just the beginning story of Concordia Language Villages. The mission of the Language Villages is to inspire courageous global citizens. So pretty broad, and as you can kind of get a sense from that, the language is just part of it, and we do a lot of things through the language. And as a Rotarian, I feel a connection between the missions of both organizations, the Language Villages and Rotary International. A lot of focus on peace, people-to-people kind of diplomacy, world understanding, those kind of things. And so, and especially with the international service and the youth service focus for Rotary, the Language Villages are an interesting kind of fit. And we have a number of our villagers, as we call the campers, Language Villages, villagers, who have been Rotarians or staff, Rotarians, either exchange students or through some of the other, the other programs that Rotary International offers for people more in their 20s, right? There's an ambassador program, there's a global peace studies, I think, program, and so on. But looking at the language villages, which from a, so it's a language camp essentially. It's a camp that has a focus of language versus, let's say, music or volleyball or computer or football or something like that. So all the activities are very camp related, but they're also very tied to the respective culture of the language that that culture represents. So the idea of understanding the language, obviously, but through the language then you learn about other people and how they think and why they think a certain way and how they perceive different issues from around the world as they get older, right? We start with 7-year-olds. We don't get into super deep issues necessarily with them unless they bring it up, and sometimes they do, but depending on their background, their family background. But as they get older, right, we go up to 18. One of the program options that we offer is a high school credit session where in 4 weeks they get a whole year's worth of high school credit for the language. 180 hours, so it's every minute of the day counts. Real time counts because you're in the target language, you're in the language all the time. So it's really living the language. You'll see that phrase later on throughout the day in a camp environment with a ratio of roughly 1 counselor for every 3 villagers. So a lot of counselor supervision, language that kind of is surrounding the kids at all times. And as we talked about, and I think some of you have second language. Who else besides French and German? Other languages in the room? Spanish? Yeah, great. Do you speak it for work? Or?
It was my major.
Ah, okay, cool. Anything else? Anybody else?
Well, I speak French, but my daughter did Chinese through Concordia
Oh, she
many
did?
times. She did
Ah.
2 summers of the full 4 weeks.
Ah, very cool. So you guys can give the presentation.
Loved it. Yeah.
And so, some of these elements of the mission, like the last one, is a little lofty, but I think for some of the villagers, that's what kind of resonates with them, especially when they get into 15, 16, 17 years old, to become more interested in and the way we talk about things. We go through historic events that happen in the area where the language is spoken, or current events, or pop culture, of course. And so just understanding that gives you a different sense for your own society, your own community that you live in. So that's a big part of it. The language is kind of the conduit through which all these other elements hopefully happen, especially over time. Our 3 boys went to camp for 10 summers in a row. And we were lucky that they drank the Kool-Aid because my wife and I both were involved in camp, and camp is a 24-hour kind of thing. So having the kids along, being part of it was really special for them and fun. And like I said, or like Peggy said, that our youngest actually went on a Rotary Youth Exchange to Sweden, and that was his idea. And he's kind of the guy who likes 200 step days. People go for 10,000 steps. He tries to go for no more than 200 steps. As a teenager, of course. He's better at it now. But so anyway, so we thought when he said, I want to go on an exchange program in Rotary, we said, sure, go for it. Application is available online. I can get it to you, and it's due in 2 weeks. And he did most of the work himself. He actually did it, which was great, good for him. And then the last night before deadline, we helped a little bit. But, he ended up going to Sweden. At first you put down, I think you can give 5 choices of the countries that you'd like to go to. There's no guarantee. And he put down Sweden, 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 Sweden. Doesn't work that way, so he did Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Germany, kind of up there that Northern European tier. That's what he felt comfortable with as a 15-year-old at the time. But had huge impact on him. He's still in touch with his host families. Very comfortable living abroad. After college, he went to Spain for a year to teach English in a high school, or as a teaching assistant outside of Madrid. And then COVID hit, right? And so he didn't get the Europe travel in that he wanted. And so he ended up staying another 2 years and lived in the Czech Republic, working for a company headquartered out of Bangalore, India, that had European headquarters in Brno, Czech Republic. And he was supporting a client in Sweden, doing customer IT tech support. So he used his Swedish that he learned as a Rotary Exchange student, as well as at camp. So you never know what you start when a child starts getting exposed to another language and culture and those kind of things. So The Language Villages will be 65 years old next summer, 65th summer coming up. We get villagers or participants from all 50 states every summer, including Hawaii, Alaska. Often Mississippi is one of the last ones to register, but they always come in. And like I said, it's the idea of living the language. They arrive, we call it a border, we don't emphasize that as much anymore, but they have a passport that we send to them ahead of time. They exchange their currency to the currency of the country where the language is spoken, so that they can buy their camp canteen kind of merchandise and ice cream and pop and whatever souvenirs with that currency and get a feel for that. Work with the exchange rate, all those kind of things that we, when we travel, it takes a day or two to figure out how much is this really worth. Mm-hmm. After a couple of days, you don't worry about converting it anymore. So then they take a name that reflects that culture. So they really get kind of, a lot of the kids actually say, at camp they can be who they want to be. They typically don't come with friends, so there's no peer pressure that they have from a school setting at home or family setting, those kind of things. And so for a lot of kids, camp in general, also at Concordia Language Villages, is one of those experiences that really allows them to be who they are and develop in the way they want to develop as a person. As much as the language is a big focus, so is the culture. They're really not separable in many ways, but through the language you learn the culture, be it riddles, be it rhymes, be it songs, be it little idioms, those kind of things that have meaning in a larger context from a cultural standpoint. Of course, like Concordia College's mission statement is about influencing the affairs of the world, so the language will just fit into that with our mission of global citizens as well. After about 50 years of doing these programs, one of my previous colleagues had gone to a national language conference where a different institution, also starting a language campus kind of idea, was trying to define themselves against what we, Concordia, are not. Saying that we're too campy and they want to be more academic, that that's better, those kind of things. So before we let them define us, we started defining ourselves. Okay, what is it that makes a Language Village program unique, and what is it that, what elements do we pay attention to when we develop curriculum, when we implement the curriculum, when we implement our programming that is consistent across the board, no matter who the audience is, what the target age is. And so those are kind of the 6 principles that help, through interviews and conversations with staff and previous staff, we kind of came down to these 6 defining principles of what a Concordia experience is like. So creating this need to communicate, like when you get the currency, when you go to the store, you have to ask for the merchandise in the target language. So kids want to buy their ice cream, whatever, they have to use the language, right, to do so. The same thing at the mealtime. It's a family-style meal where we pass around dishes in most cases, and they have to ask, please pass me the salt, or respond to somebody who's requesting their food in the target language. So it's just in a natural setting of the day, the flow of the day, where they learn how to apply the language. So that, except for the high school credit program, there isn't like formal grammar lessons, let's say, like you might remember from your own school days. But the grammar is taught through the phrases that they have to use in different contexts. And of course, as they get more advanced in the small language classes they have 3 times a day, they do build on that, and they do learn more of a structure and the reasons behind why you say certain things, or why the endings change and those kind of things in different languages. And so really the idea is to build the confidence in just speaking the language. When they come as a first-year camper without any background, it's pretty intimidating because the staff only speak in the target language. Right? They might only be 7, 8, 9 years old, but most of them want to be there. Sometimes grandma or mom or dad make that decision for them, of course, but And they come for different reasons. It could be heritage, it could be that the family has a connection to a certain country. Why Chinese?
Just because.
Just
It's
because,
just-
yeah.
no connection, no
Yeah.
heritage, but
Yeah.
she was a Chinese minor in college.
Yeah. Same with my youngest, who did Swedish. The oldest who did Norwegian. My wife's, Minnesota heritage, German. They all did German, but Swedish just happened to be available. Where the youngest insisted on going to camp, even though we didn't think he was quite ready, but he did fine and stuck with Swedish for 9 more years after that. So it really takes a village, and like I talked about the ratio before. We have a strong of one camp counselor for every 3 kids, roughly on average. We bring in about 700-800 staff each summer that we hire for the camps. We now offer 14 languages. I didn't say that part. So there is Arabic. Let's see if I can do alphabetical order. Arabic, Chinese, Danish, French and Finnish and French, German. I'm going to lose the alphabet here now, but Portuguese, Italian, Norwegian, Japanese, Korean, Russian, and Spanish. I think that's all.
And Swedish.
What's that?
Swedish still?
And Swedish, thank you. Of course, Swedish, right? So it's about 1,000 kids that we have in our care. Kids, and, I should say, campers and staff together in our campus on any given day in the summer. So it's a pretty big. I'll show you the campus in just a little bit. And then, some of the staff, about 15-20%, come from abroad as native speakers. We're authorized by the U.S. State Department to issue or request a visa with them, a J1 camp counselor visa, like there's a J1 au pair, J1 teacher, J1 student. We tap into the camp counselor visa option. So there's the property of Concordia. So like I talked about before, in '61, Jerry Huckabo founded the program, kind of his brainchild. We have 1-week sessions, 2-week sessions, which are the most common. About 60% of the kids attend a 2-week session. The 4-week session for high school credit. We have family programs, so where parents come with their children. And then also adult programs. We'll have more about that in just a little bit as well. And then after 5 years or so at college, Jerry Huckabo again said, actually a student at Concordia helping him pack up the camps at the end of the summer. So wouldn't it be nice if we had our own place? And so Concordia agreed to put a development committee together. That was actually chaired by Charlie Mayo II from the Mayo family. And they put a call out for realtors and property owners to sell a piece of property around the lake to Concordia College. And we ended up in Bemidji. That was one of 5 top choices. So over 20 properties were looked at to begin with. And so then in '66, Concordia purchased a property on Tulipper Lake, about 800 acres at the time. Now we got 875 acres on this lake, about 3.5 miles of shoreline around that south bay of Tulipper Lake. And then the idea was to build architecturally authentic facilities to represent at least some of the languages and cultures for which we have the language offered. So the first one, we're in Minnesota, was Skoopjorden. All the village names translate to Lake in the Woods, roughly. Lac du Bois, French, right? Waldsee, German. Sundenhof, Chinese, Lac du Bosque. And so, but we're in Minnesota, lots of Norwegian heritage. So Sons of Norway, along with the Bush Foundation, invested in building the Norwegian language village facility, which was broken in 1969 and then finished in the 70s over time. After that came German, Waldsee, Lac du Bois on the west side of the lake, and then we moved over to Saulak in the Finnish village, Spanish. We purchased a Russian site, which is a separate property on the north side of the lake, kind of not attached to the southern bay. And then over time, we just this summer dedicated the first phase of the Korean language village facility, the first Asian village on the property at Concordia. And interesting story there, all the facilities are built with private donations. We're nonprofit. So mostly camper villager families, other donors, grants, foundations that we approach. But the Concordia Language Village got the largest gift we ever received with a $5 million contribution from a guy named Kenny Park, who is the founder, CEO, president of a company called Sibon Corporation in Seoul, and they make 80% of the world market of luxury handbags. So he's one of about 50 billionaires in South Korea. And he came to visit for the dedication, and he continues to support the program. He's always offered scholarship funds, and then a couple of years ago decided to make a more significant gift, which we're very grateful for. Academic year, so summer is our peak season, and about 70-75% of our activity and revenue is from the summer. But during the school year, and Brian was part of that, bringing school groups to Lac du Bois, to the weekend programs. That's how I first started my career with the villages, actually, when I came as a high school student to Grand Forks from Germany. The high school teacher brought me along as a native speaker to one of their weekend programs for German. And the staff team said, "You seem to enjoy this, you seem to have fun, you live close, why don't you come back?" So I did. Still there. No, I took about a 7-year hiatus from my MBA and some work in manufacturing for a while. But family weekends, especially like upcoming MEA weekend, President's Day weekend, Martin Luther King weekend, even during the winter short weekends, not all languages, but a variety of things that are offered. Of course, with COVID, we did a lot more online. We had to be online for about a year and a half, which was a struggle, of course, just yet to transition. Turned out surprisingly well, so we still offer some of those. There's a couple of holiday workshops specifically for Nordic crafts, or those who like to make little Swedish nissen or other. So you do some crafts during that weekend, and you also do some baking. So really, you could do all your holiday baking right there, because you get to take stuff with you when you leave. So very popular, and the Norwegian program started that. Now we have one that's more general European across the board. And then we rent a site out for local groups and organizations for workshops and retreats and those kind of things. Peggy mentioned I was a director of the Concordia Language Training Center. That's been something we started at Concordia in 2016. So the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense, in 2011 started something called Language Training Centers. And the idea is to help have institutions of higher education in the U.S. support language training needs for the Defense Department, for different military intelligence, those kind of things, other work that they do as well. So Concordia applied for a grant. We found the history of the language villages. Concordia Language Villages are fairly well known in the language education world, and we were approved, and so now we're working with 3 different specific clients within the Defense Department structure. The Utah National Guard has about 2,000 linguists that are involved in a bunch of different things: translation, interpretation, some on the ground, some listening to things and interpreting. And then First Special Forces Command out of Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and also the 16th Air Force. So they're primary users or clients of our programs during the academic year primarily now. The grant has been between about $700,000 and about $1.2 million a couple of years ago. And in addition to that grant, where they bring groups for those languages to us, we also got a second grant. This is a year ago, roughly, to work with the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, which is the primary language training institution within the Defense Department structure. So we do some workshops for their faculty, and they also send some students to us as well as part of the language acquisition program. So Concordia Language Villages, along with the training center, are really unique in how we approach language teaching, and that's partly why they came to us and why they wanted us to be part. It's not a typical classroom setting. It's hands-on, it's experiential, it's practical language use. It's every time a group comes, let's say for Korean or Chinese, Persian, we update the curriculum so that it's not just a textbook we use for chapter 1, 2, 3, no matter how old content maybe it's always refreshed based on current events. And again, the ratio is 1 instructor for every 2 service members, so lots of attention. And that's what the idea of they talk about here as well in the quote. You know, if you have 6 teachers for 12 students roughly, and the teachers are all native speakers, they all bring different perspectives about their own language and culture, just like you each have different experiences with the American culture, whatever that is, right? And so that's one of the big benefits. Of course, for the kids as well, because they're surrounded by native speakers and people who have traveled and those kind of things. But from a professional training standpoint for the Defense Department, that's a big benefit to them. Look at that. So there we go. We made it to the end. Social media, the QR code brings you to our website. Contact information is right there. There's some brochures on your table as well. So I guess I didn't leave much time for Q&A, but I'm happy to answer and say longer as well. Yeah.
So are you using, when they went to the euro then, so are you using German euros and French euros?
We have all different kinds of euros, but just like in Europe, they end up getting mixed, right?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. But when we switched, we had to get about 17,000 euros in coins because we only use coins. Paper currency gets torn up, and with kids using them just in pockets and whatever, coins survive better. So we just as staff people came to you from Europe, we each gave them a couple $100 to bring coins back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do the villages ever mingle when they're there the same week?
So pre-pandemic, we had what we call International Day, so where all the kids come together in session at the time for a big festival, food, games, soccer tournament, art show, all those kind of things. We haven't restarted that yet since the pandemic.
Did you do anything around the Olympics?
Not specifically. Each village might do it at the French village this summer because it was in Paris. They did their own Olympics kind of thing as a camp kind of activity. Yeah.
Where is Sinlin Hu now? Because didn't it burned, right?
Yeah, so Sinlin Hu, the Chinese language village, was at a facility we rented, Maple Lodge Cross Country Skiing Resort. Some of you might know that, which the lodge burned down about a year and a half ago, 2.5 years ago. And so it was in Concordia's campus, and this next summer it's going to be in Bemidji. We've made room on the campus.
Okay.
Can you give them a round of applause?
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause.